Back like cooked crack for the 83rd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. Let's go. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Hold on a second. Let's turn this thing down a little bit. That sounds a lot better. How you guys doing? Appreciate you guys jumping on with me here on the 83rd installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Whew. Getting that much closer to the NFL season, and it feels like it. It's starting to feel like football is upon us. I still am missing these preseason games. And, you know, it's funny. I thought I would never say that I would actually feel like I need the preseason, that I'm missing the preseason. But here we are. You know, we would have been going into the fourth week, of the preseason. Nobody cares about the final week of the preseason except for those guys on the bubble trying to make the squad. So not necessarily would have missed this game per se, but, just actually seeing professional tackle football on the screen is something I get excited about, and not having that and being deprived of it this August, a little disappointing, not going to lie to you, but we're getting closer. Last day of August, we're about to hit September, and that means we're going to get football, whether it's a whole season or not, I can't say right now, but we're going to get some football nonetheless, and Bart Scott can't wait, but a lot of stuff I want to get to today on the pod, but before I get to any of that stuff today, I do want to let you guys know that the merch is now available. A lot of people have been asking me about merch for a long time. I've been going through this process of trying to get, merch available for my brand for a very long time. I finally found someone that I trust to handle everything that involves the packaging, the printing, the shipping, any concerns you may have with an order or anything, they're handling it on their side, and they're doing a tremendous job over at the Print Champs. And so finally got my merch available for the public to consume, and it's up on the website, LouieTeeNetwork.net. It's also on the Print Champs website, but it's down in the link below. You can find the links to both the website and the Print Champs, where you can purchase some merch. So I'm actually rocking a tee. I don't know if you can see it right now, but I'm already rocking one right now as we speak. Pretty dope. And so I'm excited about it. And I'm going to have a lot of different things going on. And you just got to stay tuned. I'll have some deals and things of that nature. So make sure you're locked into the Louie T Network. I revamped the website. So LouieTeeNetwork.net looks a lot different, a lot better, honestly speaking. So I was able to do that as well. So check all of it out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you subscribe to the website so you don't miss anything there in terms of new merch that might be up on the site, deals that you may be able to get if you sign up for the site. So just make sure you are in tune to what's going on. Also, LTN exclusives are up and running, ready to rock and roll for the upcoming 2020 season. Soul Survivor Pool is back. I can't believe it's been 8 years we've been doing the Soul Survivor Pool. It's almost mind-blowing to think it's been going on that long, and I still haven't won one, which is crazy. That's the craziest part about that. The Winners and Losers is back. I was the champion last year, had to redeem myself after falling short. I think I finished in like 7th place the year prior. So, I was out for revenge. And it felt so good to serve it up ice cold like it's supposed to be. So I'm trying to defend the crown like the Kansas City Chiefs this year, hoping I can do that. So Winners and Losers is up as well. And then, every single week you can play, you cannot play, but weekly pick'em pool is also available for the 2020 season. So all of that on the website, LouieTeeNetwork.net. Hit the exclusives tab, and you'll have access to all of those. And get in the game, man. What you waiting on? Get in the game. So with that being said, let's jump into the Gem Droppin Session today, shall we? Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So today's Gem Droppin Session, we talked about the AFC and we kind of went around the AFC landscape, looked at some of the teams, talked about the prospects of those teams in 2020. Now I want to go NFC Camp Crusin and look at all the teams in the NFC. Quickly talk about some storylines from camp, maybe some young players that are shining, some teams that we'll look at and think that they have a chance to compete this year, maybe some teams that we don't think are going to be all that good this year. But nonetheless, I want to go through the NFC really quickly, the entire conference, each division, each team, and kind of talk about some storylines that have come from camp, maybe some young players playing well and things of that nature. So we start in the NFC South, which I think is one of the toughest divisions in all of football. I think the NFC West, in terms of the NFC conference as a whole, I think the NFC West is the most competitive division, but the NFC South not too far behind with Brady landing in Tampa. And that's where we start. Obviously, the big storyline is Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. He brings Gronk along with him. Those two look to be ready to rock and roll and try to transform the Buccaneers from a bottom feeder in the NFC South to a team now ready to compete and do some big things. And so you look at this team, and really they weren't bottom feeders last year. So I misspoke there. This was a team that was probably a Jameis Winston interception or two, a blown lead from the defense not being able to get off the field and get stops away from think about the Giants game early in the season. I think it was the first start of Daniel Jones and how they blew that lead. They were one or two of those away from making a postseason last year. So this is a team that thinks they can take the next step now with Brady in the fold. And a guy to watch that they've been really excited about in camp is rookie safety Antoine Winfield Jr. This is a guy out of Minnesota, second-round pick by the Bucs. They've been waiting for someone to come in there and really be an enforcer and a ball hawk and a playmaker in the secondary in that defense. They've been searching for that guy, it seems like, for quite some time. Haven't really been able to find that guy. Maybe Antoine Winfield can be that guy for them. They're really excited about what they've seen from him in camp. And so this is an intriguing team in Tampa. I'm not sold that year one will be as good as a lot of people are predicting. I'm that guy that told you last year, don't buy the hype of the Cleveland Browns. I'm telling you this year, don't buy the hype of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they have a chance to be good. I just don't know if they're going to be as good as advertised. I'm not saying that they're going to necessarily miss the postseason. Depends on how the rest of the NFC stacks up. I think the NFC has a chance to be really good. You know how I feel about the NFC conference. I think this could be a team on the outside looking in when it's all said and done. But when's the last time a Tom Brady-led team didn't make the postseason? We'll see what happens. I've got my reservations about the Buccaneers, but this is a team that a lot of people are excited about heading into the 2020 NFL season. You look at the Carolina Panthers, obviously Teddy Bridgewater is the new starting quarterback of that football team. No more Cam Newton. It's a brand new day in Carolina, to be honest with you. Out with Ron Rivera, in with Matt Rule, and in comes Matt Rule with a bunch of changes, including offensive coordinator Joe Brady. This is supposed to be a dynamic offense now. Teddy Bridgewater is supposed to be the one leading it. Joe Brady's comfortable with Teddy Bridgewater, has experience with him back in New Orleans. So you're bringing in a college football coach into this NFL game. Now, Matt Rule has experience in the NFL. He was a coach in the NFL as an assistant before. So it's not like this is new territory. Same with Joe Brady, came from New Orleans Saints, went to LSU, lit it up, comes back to the NFL. So they have NFL experience. It's going to be fun to see them kind of put this thing together because they tore it down in Carolina. They tore it pretty much down. And now they're going to build it back up, and they're going to really focus on Christian McCaffrey as the centerpiece to building this thing back up from the floor up. And so we'll see how they're able to do that. I'm anxious to see how this defense performs. They lost some players in free agency, most notably James Bradbury left in free agency, and he's now a New York Giant. So we'll see what happens with this Carolina Panthers team. They should be interesting to watch. If nothing else, I think they could be dynamic on offense, but the defense may be a little bit behind the curve. You lose Luke Kuechly in the offseason as well. I think this team could take a step back defensively. And look, no one was really expecting much of anything from Carolina this season anyway. It's supposed to be a rebuilding year. We'll see what happens with this team, because I don't know if they're conceding coming in and trying to rebuild. They may think they can win right away. It's a tough division. Let's see how competitive they are in this division. You look at the Saints. This is a team that I think they're pretty much set in stone. We know what the Saints are as a football team. We know what to expect. If Drew Brees is healthy, we think they're going to be one of the more competitive teams, not just in this division, but in this conference. You look at everything that this team has done in the offseason. They've pretty much kept it status quo, haven't made a ton of changes. This is a veteran group in New Orleans. They did cut Nigel Bradham, which was a bit of a surprise, but they like some of the young linebackers that have been performing for them in training camp, and so they went ahead and moved on from Nigel Bradham. I will tell you, there is a developing storyline in New Orleans that Alvin Kamara has not shown up for camp, has been unexcused in his absence the last 3 days. And a lot of people think it's surrounding a contract. And remember, he's on the last year of his rookie deal. And remember, he's not making a ton of money. He wasn't a first round pick. He should have been, but he was not. So in essence, he's probably looking for an upgrade in pay, and he deserves it. We'll see what happens with that situation. Remember, with the new CBA, you can't miss more than 5 days consecutively. And so I can't anticipate, I can't imagine him missing 5 straight days. He may be making a statement to the team here, but he'll be back, I think, in the next day or two. So we'll see what that happens with that situation. It's worth monitoring and following, but I can't anticipate him missing more than another day. Again, 5 straight days, and then you run into problems with the new CBA. I think he'll be back. Maybe tomorrow is one more day that he'll miss. He'll be back the day after that. No later than that, I believe. But he's making a statement nonetheless. But I think the Saints, if they're healthy, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Drew Brees and company, they'll be just fine. They find a way to get it done every year, and I anticipate that they'll do much of the same this year. The Atlanta Falcons are an interesting team. They got hot at the end of the season, saved the jobs of both their general manager, Thomas Dimitroff, and their head coach, Dan Quinn, with the hot play down the stretch. Those two seemed like dead men walking. They come out of the bye week, and all of a sudden they catch fire and lightning in a bottle. They go to San Francisco. You remember that was a big win for them on the road versus the San Francisco 49ers. They went to New Orleans and stunned the Saints. They were playing out of their brains late in the season. They're looking to carry that momentum over this year, and they've got some impressive rookies reportedly coming out of training camp right now. Michael Walker is a guy that they drafted out of Fresno State later in the draft, around the 5th round or so. Athletic linebacker, kind of fits the mold of an Atlanta Falcons linebacker, fits what Dan Quinn likes to do with his linebackers, a long, rangy linebacker. And from all accounts, this guy has been outstanding in camp. So that's interesting to see. They're also, they're really impressed with A.J. Terrell, their first-round pick. A lot of people tried to clown the Falcons for making that selection. I've been a staunch supporter of A.J. Terrell, a really big fan of his, and I think he's a guy that could be, if he puts it all together, a number 1 corner in this league. And Isaiah Oliver is a guy that I was a huge fan of coming out of Colorado a few years ago. And so if those two guys can finally put the pieces of the puzzle together, the Falcons may have something out there. You add Dante Fowler Jr. up front to help you get pressure on the quarterback, and maybe this defense can turn it around. This was a bad defense last year, especially getting off the field on 3rd downs. They're looking to improve drastically on the defensive side of the football. Maybe they've got some young players that can come in right away and help them on the defensive side of the football. We shall see. You go to the NFC West. I think this is the best football division in football, not just in the NFC. I don't think you'll find a better division top to bottom with competitive teams than the NFC West. You start with the team that won this division and represented the NFC in the Super Bowl last year, the San Francisco 49ers. They are in trouble right now. Very thin at wide receiver, ton of injuries. They are really desperate for help at receiver. It wouldn't shock me that after the final cuts are made on Saturday, if the 49ers aren't scavenging and scrounging through everyone's cuts at the receiver position and looking to pick up a guy or two to help them get through. Remember, Deebo Samuel hurt himself in the offseason, gonna miss the first probably month of the season, probably going to end up starting the season on the PUP list more likely than not. Also, Jalen Hurd was a guy that they were going to be counting on this year to really give them something at the receiver position. Looks like he's torn his either his Achilles or his ACL, but nonetheless, he's done for the season. They brought in a couple of guys. They have got one of them has gotten injured. They were expecting some big things. They had traded for a wide receiver. He has ended up opting out of the season. So they've got a lot of issues at wide receiver due to the San Francisco 49ers. And so we'll see what happens with them. But this is a team that if they continue to run the football the way that they have in the past, they'll probably be just fine. They added a rookie wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk that will kind of fit that same mold as a Deebo Samuel. But, what's better than one, dynamic, very diverse back wide receiver that can do a little bit of everything for you? Two of them. And so they'd love to get Deebo Samuel back in the fold to couple with Brandon Ayuk, but they might have to lean a little bit more heavily on Brandon Ayuk, and you really don't want to do that with a rookie, but they're struggling at the receiver position with all of the injuries. You look at the Seattle Seahawks, they've made a bunch of moves this offseason, none bigger, however, than Jamal Adams coming in via trade, 2 first-round picks, controversial move. I loved it from the Seahawks standpoint because, again, I've said, for one, the 2021 draft is one of those drafts where you might be able to part ways with the first or a second-round pick and not feel as bad about it because of the nature of that draft coming up and all of the players that will have not played in some kind of organized football for over a year plus. But they don't know what to do with first-round picks anyway. So I love that trade, and he's been tearing it up in camp by all accounts. But the guy that has really been impressive is DK Metcalf, and he looks poised for a breakout year 2 campaign. I think he kind of put a lot of people on notice at the end of the season last year into the playoffs, had a big catch in a big game for that matter versus the Philadelphia Eagles in the wild card weekend. And so I think a lot of people are understanding that maybe we were wrong. I can't say we. I was wrong, and there were a lot of people out there that felt the way that I felt about DK Metcalf, that he wasn't worthy of a first-round pick, and it probably wasn't even worthy of a second. The Seahawks roll the dice, take him in the second round, and they haven't regretted this one bit. And I said that was the perfect place for him to go, and he's flourishing in Seattle right now, and they are really pleased with what they're getting out of him in camp. And, Quentin Dunbar is now a Seattle Seahawk. He's got his legal issues behind him. If he turns out to be the guy that he was blossoming into in Washington, they got themselves a steal for a 5th-round pick in Quentin Dunbar. So the Seahawks have made some moves. I still think they're struggling up front to get to the quarterback. We'll see what happens with that situation. They like what Benson Mayowa is doing in camp right now, but again, we've seen Benson Mayowa before in multiple stops, whether it's Oakland or Dallas, or even with this Seahawks team. I believe he was with them before as well. I'm not buying what Benson Mayowa is showing, and so we'll see, or selling. We'll see what happens with them. I still think they need to be able to find a way to get to the quarterback, but they seem to be really happy with what's going on. And DJ Dallas is another guy that they're reportedly excited about in camp, the running back out of the University of Miami. I like DJ Dallas, and I said this when the pick was made. He's the perfect Seattle Seahawk running back, the type of guy that they've drafted over the years, whether you're talking Chris Carson or Marshawn Lattimore or Marshawn Lynch when they got him in free agency. He fits that mold in Seattle, and I think he's going to really do good things for that Seahawks football team. You look at the Arizona Cardinals. I think they're going to be one of the most exciting teams to watch in football this year. I'm really excited to see what the Cardinals are able to put on the field. Remember, a lot of people weren't a fan of the hire of Cliff Kingsbury. I was one that was opposing most of the thought process during that time when he was hired. I thought it was a great hire, tremendous hire, because I thought he fit what the Cardinals wanted to do. And getting Kyler Murray, I thought, was the icing on the cake for him. And I think year 2 of Kyler Murray, who really looked good in his rookie season, in this offense, a year more comfortable, adjusting to the speed of the game. They add Nuke Hopkins to the mix. They've got a ton of talent. They've actually done a pretty good job the last 2 years drafting. This is a Cardinals team that I've said this already. I don't know, because this division is so tough, and the NFC is just tough in general. I don't know if you're going to get this quantum leap that a lot of people are thinking about. But it would not shock me if this team won 9 or 10 games this year. It would not shock me in the least. They've got the talent to do it. And really, it just hinges upon the step forward that Kyler Murray takes. How big of a step is it? Or is it a lateral step? Or is it a step backwards? If it's backwards, obviously they're going to regress. But if he takes a step forward, I think this team is poised and ready to make a run at the postseason. And they're going to be fun to watch. They've got weapons everywhere. You know, they move on from David Johnson, but they really love Kenyon Drake. I thought he was a tremendous addition during the season last year when they traded for him, and they keep him with a transition tag this year. He's a guy that fits this offense. Look out for the Arizona Cardinals. I'm just saying. And then you move on to the Los Angeles Rams. They seem to be the forgotten team in this division. Remember, just 2 years ago, they were in the Super Bowl representing the NFC conference. And the year before that, Sean McVay burst onto the scene, wins the division. Everyone's going goo goo gaga looking for the next Sean McVay. He was the hot ticket last year going into the season, and they kind of just fell off a cliff. Injuries really derailed the season. Todd Gurley wasn't right. They had injuries with Cooper Kupp and a number of different guys. Jared Goff seemed to regress a bit. And so it just was a rough season for the Rams. They barely missed the postseason. With all that being said, they just missed out on the postseason by a game. And so this is a team that no one's really talking about. If not for Hard Knocks, I don't think they'd be getting any pub right now. And so this is a team that I don't think you should sleep on this year. It wouldn't shock me if McVay goes back to the drawing board, makes some adjustments, because what it really boiled down to was McVay had a step on the league. The league caught up with him. Now it's time for him to readjust. If he does that, I think he can be back a step ahead of the rest of the league, and this team could go, 11-5 again and be right back in the mix. We'll see what they decide to do and how they handle the season. They've got a couple of rookies that are going to have to step up for them. This is not optional. They are going to need production from these guys. You start with Cam Akers, a guy that they drafted in the second round of this draft, and I think he is going to be instrumental in their success. They need a running back to not only run the football, but probably more importantly, catch it out of the backfield. He's a guy that they think can do both of those things. He's had some issues holding on to the football in camp. That's something he had an issue with at Florida State. We'll see if he's able to rid himself of that issue. If not, it's hard to stay on the field and have confidence in a guy that can't hold on to the rock. But the guy that I loved in their draft in the third round out of Florida is Van Jefferson, the wide receiver, who they think is doing a tremendous job to this point in camp. Love Van Jefferson. Reportedly, he was destroying the twos in camp, so they upped him against the ones, kind of slowed him down a bit. But Van Jefferson is a guy that's going to win. To me, he fits perfectly in Sean McVay's offense. Looking forward to seeing what he's able to do in this offense. I think he can be a really dynamic player for the Los Angeles Rams. You look at the NFC East division. The Dallas Cowboys are the talk of the division right now. They've got two rookies, one on each side of the football, that are making headlines for their football team. I've told you this, the Cowboys, they know how to do it right in the draft. I've said this about 5 or 6 teams every year that I just expect big things from them in the draft because they just seem to understand how the draft works in terms of compiling talent. And it's not just rounds 1 and 2 or 3. You're talking about getting value picks in the 5th and the 6th round. And the Cowboys did that this year with edge rusher Bradley Anae, who had no business being on the board in the 5th round. They get him. He's been turning heads at camp. We talked about them needing to add a guy opposite of Tank Lawrence. Bradley Anae may ultimately be that guy. They did add Everson Griffin in the offseason, so he's going to come in and obviously be a guy that's going to help. But Everson Griffin's getting up in their age. He's not a guy you want playing on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. I think they want to limit his amount of snaps. So a guy like Bradley Anae could be in there seeing some opportunities. And I'll tell you what, he has been turning heads in camp. I've always liked Bradley Anae. I thought it was a great pick by the Cowboys and a steal, and he's performing well. We'll see if it translates to the regular season. And then, of course, the new 88 in Big D. Of course, I'm talking about CeeDee Lamb, a guy that really fell into the Cowboys' lap. They did not necessarily need CeeDee Lamb, but it was too much value to pass up. They take the Oklahoma product, and he has been electrifying in camp. They're really excited about the dynamic ability of their offense to this point. And when you look at this, they had 2,000-yard receivers coming into camp in Michael Gallup and, of course, Amari Cooper. And now you add in another capable 1,000-yard receiver in CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys are sitting pretty. You still got Ezekiel Elliott in the background. You got Dak Prescott. This is a talented football team. I really like what the Cowboys are putting together offensively, defensively. I've just talked about some of the things that they've done to spruce up the defense. I think the big question mark for the Cowboys is the secondary. They did go out and get Clinton Dix in free agency. Really don't know what that means, but this is a secondary with a lot of young football players. They moved on from Byron Jones. We'll see if the secondary can hold up or not. To me, that is the one question that I've got in Dallas is that secondary ready to hold up or not? We'll see. You look at the Eagles, man, have they been ravaged by injuries in camp. This is another team that you expect to really compete in the NFC East for the NFC divisional crown. But injuries have already jeopardized this season to a fault. Not to the point where you're thinking to yourself, man, the Eagles could be in some serious trouble. But, you know, they lose their left tackle, Andre Dillard, who tore his bicep. I believe it was his bicep, not his pec. I think it was his bicep. And so he's done for the season. And so now they're trying to experiment at left tackle because they brought back the wily old veteran that probably is going to end up being a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done, in Jason Peters. And he was going to play guard this year. And he said, look, if you want me to go back out there and be your protector at left tackle, I'm going to need a little bit more money. I'm going to need a bump in pay. Okay, I didn't sign up. The contract I signed was for me to play guard, not for me to play tackle. I've never heard a player do that before. So that's an interesting dynamic there. But then you look at Carson Wentz, who already, has had issues with injuries in the past. He's dealing with a lower back issue. You never want to hear a quarterback dealing with back. You don't want to hear a player at all dealing with a back, let alone your quarterback. So he's been out of camp for a little bit here. I think he'll be ready for week 1. We'll see if that's something that lingers or not with him. And then your rookie wide receiver, Jalen Reagor, who I wasn't a fan of the Eagles taking, he's banged up as well and looked like he's going to miss a little bit of time. So this is an Eagles team decimated by injuries to this point. We'll see how they're able to circumvent that. I think this is a really talented football team, and I've said this all along, all camp, all offseason, that they're the one team with a leg up on the rest of the division because they were the one team that did not make a head coaching change. And with all of this COVID-19 situation and all of the different things that have hindered teams from meeting and getting to know their new players, the Eagles had continuity. They had the same head coach. They had the same staff. They were in a position to really take off, and with all these injuries, maybe they'll end up taking a step back. We will see. You get to the New York Giants, and this is a team that, much like the Washington football team, they're kind of in a transition period, looking to rebuild themselves into a powerhouse. They hired new head coach Joe Judge, relative unknown, but he's been around coaching royalty, whether in college, Nick Saban, or at the pros with Bill Belichick. He comes in. I like what I'm hearing from this guy. And he comes in here with a mindset of, hey, the best players will play. We'll see how that works out in New York. They made a bunch of moves in the offseason, spent some money, went out and acquired some players to help bolster this defense, including Blake Martinez and the aforementioned James Bradbury. They made some other moves, like getting linebacker David Mayo from the Panthers. Well, he's injured now, and so is rookie safety Xavier McKinney, who I thought was a steal in the second round, one of the biggest steals of the early portion of the draft. And so he's now going to miss some significant time with a broken foot. And so they're dealing with some injuries, are the New York Giants. And they're a team that can ill afford injuries. They're still trying to build chemistry and trying to figure out what guys can and can't help moving forward. And so a tough situation to be in, dealing with injuries. Then you look at the Washington football team. I think the biggest thing coming out of their camp was supposed to be a quarterback battle between Dwayne Haskins, if Alex Smith was healthy, Alex Smith, and Kyle Allen, who they traded a 5th round pick for. But really, Dwayne Haskins has run away with this battle. I don't think it's much of a battle at this point. He's going to be the starting quarterback of this football team. I think now what you start to look at, there's some questions on the offensive line, what they're going to do at left tackle. They're not happy with their backup left tackle situation. Cornelius Lucas has been inconsistent at best. They may be another another team searching through the waiver wire at the end of these roster cuts, looking for some depth. So they like what they've seen out of their starting left tackle, Jaron Christian. They were expecting to have some serious competition there with their rookie in the 4th round, Sadiq Charles. He gets banged up, and so now they've had to rely on a guy that they signed to be depth in Cornelius Lucas. He hasn't provided the kind of depth they were hoping, and so they are looking a little shaky on the left side of their offensive line. They've had a serious competition at left guard. I thought that competition would have been sewn up like a tailor right now. Instead, it's wide open as Wes Martin has not taken that position and run with it. He's left the door slightly ajar. And other guys are now competing to see if they can steal that spot away from him. When it's all said and done, I think the left side of that line will look like this. Jaron Christian at left tackle, Wes Martin at left guard, but to be continued. We'll see what happens with that situation. A lot of different things have happened. Obviously, Darius Geis dismissed from the team after sexual assault, or not sexual assault. Those were some allegations at the LSU of rape on their campus, but that was even before the Washington football team released him. We were talking about domestic violence. So they've got a lot of things. Kelvin Harmon goes down before the season starts to an ACL. So they're a young team in a transition period. The name changed. It's been quite a whirlwind of an offseason for this Washington football team. The fact that we're calling them the Washington football team and not the Washington Redskins tells you all you need to know about the state of this offseason for the Washington football team. You look at the NFC North, the Packers are a really interesting team. We talked about the draft here on the podcast already, and they had one of the surprise picks of the first round, taking quarterback Jordan Love out of Utah State. And really what that signified is that the clock is ticking on Aaron Rodgers as the starting quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. And so now everybody wants to know, what's Aaron Rodgers going to do? Is he going to light the league up? Is he upset? Is he mad? We'll see what happens, and if this does motivate and fuel Aaron Rodgers to have a breakout season, a big-time season, because he was good last year, but he wasn't great. And I was disappointed in the Packers for not adding a receiver via the draft. We'll see if he's able to get past that. He seemed to always have gotten past not having enough weaponry in Green Bay since his early time when he won a Super Bowl. And, we'll talk about this Packers team here in a second again. However, you look at the Packers and what they've done at camp, and one of the guys that's supposed to be really looking to take a step forward in his second year, a guy that I was not really high on and thought he was very overdrafted last year, was Rashawn Gary out of Michigan. They think that this guy is ready to turn the corner and produce for them at a high level. He came into the league last year, kind of made a positional switch. They were trying to figure out what they had in him because, remember, he was sort of a tweener coming out of Michigan. Weren't really sure what this guy was capable of. Now they think this guy is ready to really provide them with some huge dividends in his sophomore campaign. So that's a guy that they're really excited about. Also, I think the Packers are interesting because the defense stepped up last year. They got the Smith boys in free agency last year, Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith, to both ball out of control last year, both eclipsing 13 sacks or more on the season. Can they get a duplicate from that duo, and can the defense step up and help this offense out? The Packers made some moves that kind of shows that they're maybe shifting away from the type of offense we've seen in the past with this football team. Kind of saw a little glimpse of that last year with the way they ran their offense, but to go out and draft the running back out of Boston College, A.J. Dillon, a power back, a big physical back, kind of goes away from what we've seen with this Packers football team. So again, interesting to see what the Packers are doing and to see if they can repeat what they did a season ago and maybe take it a step further. Don't know if they did enough in the draft to help them at this point do that, but we will see. You look at the Chicago Bears, the Bears quarterback battle. Their head coach, Matt Nagy, said, look, we're not going to announce who's going to start for us until it's time, meaning you won't hear about who's going to start for the Bears, whether it's going to be Nicholas Foles or if it's going to be Mitchell Trubisky. His mama named him Mitchell. I'm going to call him Mitchell. And so we'll see which one of those guys win. I surmise it's going to be Mitchell Trubisky. They're going to give him one last shot to prove that he is the guy in Chicago. And if not, we all know Nicholas Foles is more than comfortable with being a backup and then coming in when the opportunity presents itself and balling out. So I think they're going to go with that model, allow Mitchell Trubisky the opportunity to do it again. And if he can't, then you'll have one of the guys that's the best in the business at coming off the bench and providing you with some quality play in Nicholas Foles. You also saw their running back last week go down, and David Montgomery, one of my favorite players from the 2018 NFL draft, he ended up going down, 2019 NFL draft. He went down last week with a groin injury. It was a freaky accident. He was doing a drill, kind of, slid and awkwardly went down, hurt his groin. He'll be out for a little while, but they are really excited about another rookie this year, in Darnell Mooney, wide receiver out of Marshall, a guy that I really liked. Kind of small. That was the thing that you looked at him and said, man, this guy's like 5'9". He's about $175, but he can get up, he can run, and he can make plays. He's got strong hands. And so they've been really impressed with Darnell Mooney to the point now where they're thinking to themselves, maybe we could actually use him a little bit more than Ted Ginn. They brought Ted Ginn to be their stretch the field vertical threat, wide receiver. Maybe Darnell Mooney is the guy that could take that mantle and maybe get more reps than Ted Ginn Jr. We'll see, but Darnell Mooney has been a little bit of a standout for the Bears in camp. And to think that you're talking about a 6th round pick, I believe he was, or either 5th or 6th. He might have been a 4th. But either way, a mid to late round pick, maybe coming in and helping them at the wide receiver position. You look at the Lions. This is a team I'm not really expecting a ton from this year. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not the biggest fan of Matt Patricia, but this is the year it seems like if he's going to win, it needs to be this year. Now, I've said this, to be fair, before the injuries took effect last year, before Matthew Stafford got banged up, this was a good football team early in the season. I always harken back to that Monday night game on the road versus the Packers that they should have won. I felt like the officials really had a major hand in the Packers winning that football game, but that's nor here nor there. They nosedived last year after the injury to Stafford. And so let's see if they can kind of start back where they were before the injuries, get back to playing, good football defensively. They get the cornerback that they so desire after moving on from Darius Slay in the offseason. So they add in a shutdown corner, they believe, out of Ohio State. And so now when you look at what they've done defensively, they add in another pass rusher, one out of Notre Dame. So they've got both of those brothers on the defensive line trying to get after the quarterback. This is an interesting Detroit Lions defense with some speed and some quickness and some guys that can move. Now you have the corner in Okudah. Let's see what they do offensively. It's interesting. The guy that stood out for them in camp offensively isn't who you would think. It's their 5th round pick out of Wisconsin, Quintez Cephas. They've been really impressed with him to the point now. And remember, they've got 3 receivers that they are going to be counting on very heavily this upcoming season, in Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones and Danny Amendola, all 3 of them are playing on the last year of their deals. So you would expect Kenny Golladay to be a guy that they would want back. He's emerging as a star potentially in this league. One more big year from him, and I think you'll be able to slap him with a star label at the receiver position. But Marvin Jones is up there in age. You let him walk. Amendola, same thing. Maybe Quintez Cephas kind of slides right in to that role as the number 2 wide receiver behind Kenny Golladay, and they just keep it pushing. That's what they're hoping. And right now, he's proving that he is up to that task. We'll see if that kind of transitions into the season and he continues to play good football when it counts for real. And then finally, the Minnesota Vikings, the team that was right behind the Packers in this division last year and competed and won a playoff game on the road versus New Orleans. This is a team that mass exodus in the offseason. A lot of different things have transpired. Dalvin Cook not happy with his contract, wants a new deal. Obviously, they ended up having to trade away Stephon Diggs. He wanted out of Minnesota, so they obliged there. They had a record number of draft picks this year in the 2020 NFL Draft, 15 selections, not to mention moving on from Mackenzie Alexander in the secondary, moving on from Trey Waynes in the secondary, and also releasing Xavier Rhodes. Not to mention also losing along their defensive line, Everson Griffin. This is a team with a lot of turnover, offensively and defensively. Now they add in Yannick Ngakoue, which is a fascinating move. I talked about this already on a video, but Yannick Ngakoue to me is one of the premier young elite pass rushers, and he's playing alongside the guy that may be the elite young pass rusher in this league in Danielle Hunter. You put those two together and they could wreak havoc on not just the NFC North division, but on the NFC conference as a whole. They're that good, and they may need to with that secondary. It's young. They've got some talent, but it's extremely young in Minnesota. If those guys aren't ready to step up, the front seven may be the key to the Vikings not falling apart at the seams. I think they'll be able to circumvent the loss of Stephon Diggs and the production that he brings to the table because of the drafting of Justin Jefferson, who I think is going to be an absolute stud and a perfect fit for that offense. However, I don't know if they can still get the same kind of play out of their defense. I never like to doubt a Mike Zimmer coached defense, and the addition of Yannick Ngakoue puts me at ease somewhat, as I believe he's going to add tremendous value to this Minnesota Vikings defense and really make them a real player in that division yet again. So that's NFC Camp Crusin. We'll talk more about these divisions specifically, talk about who we think are going to win these divisions, and really get in depth with these divisions down the road as we get closer and closer to the season. But now I want to transition to something I like to call run or done. So run or done. And what this is we're talking about teams with aging veteran quarterbacks. And what I'm going to ask you, I'm not going to answer today. We'll answer this on the next episode. I'm just going to leave this out here for you guys. All right, I want to hear from you guys. Are these teams done with these quarterbacks, or do they have a run in them to get to a chip and potentially hoist a Lombardi? So is there a run in these teams with these aging veteran quarterbacks, or are these teams done and their window is closed? And so we're going to run through three teams in the NFC, 3 teams in the AFC, and we'll move on. So let's start in the NFC because I think that's the stronger conference with some teams that really have quarterbacks and teams that are ready to win right now. Not maybe so much in the AFC. We'll see, but you start with the New Orleans Saints. To me, this is the team that's been knocking on the door. It seems like for the last 3-4 years, they find tragic ways to have their seasons ended. You go back 3 years ago to the Minneapolis Miracle. You go to 2 years ago with the Rams robbery. And then you go to last year with them losing in overtime to the Vikings yet again on the Kyle Rudolph push-off. Look, there are a lot of plays that happened leading up to that, including the Vikings defense stymieing what had been an explosive and dynamic Saints offense to that point. That's nor here nor there. They've had ample opportunities, home field advantage, you name it. They've had it to get to the Super Bowl, and they haven't been able to do it. Drew Brees is 41 years old. He's not a spring chicken. As a matter of fact, a lot of us think this is his last year in the league. And so how many more opportunities can they possibly have? I talked about Alvin Kamara wanting a new deal. His deal is up at the end of this season. They've got a couple of other guys that are key players. Their deals will be up at the end of the season. They're already strapped for cash as it is. They're up against it, which is why they continue to release players that we didn't think were going to get released, whether you're talking about Larry Warford because they drafted Cesar Ruiz, or you're talking about Nigel Bradham. They're moving on from guys that have a little bit of extra cap savings attached to them. And so where are the Saints? Are they a team that their window is closed? There are only so many opportunities you get before the football gods officially shut the window on you and say you've had your chances. No one's had more chances than the Saints. Okay, this is a team that has been in the postseason in some high-profile games, whether you're talking the divisional round 3 years ago against the Minnesota Vikings, had them on the ropes, let them off the hook. whether you're talking 2 years ago, home field advantage throughout, home playoff game in the NFC Championship game. And again, the officials had a huge say in that outcome. But again, you still had opportunities to win. You won the toss in overtime and you didn't get it done. So I don't want to hear any excuses if you are the New Orleans Saints. And then last year, you're home against the Minnesota Vikings and you let the Vikings come into New Orleans and beat you in overtime. You've had opportunities. Is this team done, or do they still have a run in them with 41-year-old Drew Brees? It'll be interesting to see if they have one more run at it, or if this team had their opportunities and they are done. Let's go to the next team, and that's the Green Bay Packers. They went 13-3 last year, one of the better teams in the NFC conference. They had the number 2 seed. They almost lost in the divisional round to the Seattle Seahawks coming off of that bye, but they were able to get past them. They get to San Francisco, a team that had drubbed them in the regular season, and they suffered the same fate. They weren't tough enough. They weren't physical enough. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't protect Aaron Rodgers. They were mauled in that game physically. And I think this offseason, there probably was an emphasis put on being tougher, more physical at the point of attack, being able to protect Aaron Rodgers a little bit better. We'll see if they get that done. But Aaron Rodgers is 36 years old. And, he's a younger version of 36. But then when you start adding in the concussions and the injuries that he sustained over his career, I think he's right around 36. You would think that, the first 3 or 4 years not playing, sitting behind Brett Favre, it allowed him to have one of those Kurt Warner, Trent Green type careers where, Rich Gannon type careers where you could play a little bit longer because you didn't play as much early in your career. But Aaron's taken a beating in his career, and so he's probably about 36. Do the Packers have a run in them? I think the defense at times is improved. Then there are times, as we saw in the San Francisco game last year, which was just a bad matchup for them, where the defense isn't quite as improved. But I think overall the defense is better. I think the offense, I still feel like they could have done more to help Aaron Rodgers and some of the guys out there, Devontae Adams and such, in the passing game. I think they could have done something at wide receiver. I know they've spent a bunch of, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round picks on guys over the years, and they're going to roll with that. The Equanimous St. Browns of the world, and the, what's the really fast wide receiver that they have with like 6 names. They've done a bunch of stuff at receiver. Jake Kumaro seems to be the guy that's stepping up at camp right now for the Packers, and you're thinking to who? Jake who? Yeah, and he had his moments last year as well. I think back to the Raiders game last year where Jake Kumaro had a big showing, and even the Lions game, I thought he did some good things. And they've got the big kid, Alan Lazard. They've got some stuff. Is Alan Lazard still in Green Bay? He may be still in Green Bay. At the end of the day, I thought they should have done more. But can a 36-year-old Aaron Rodgers still carry the load in Green Bay? I think they're trying to take some of that off his plate. You kind of saw that last year. They ran it a lot more. They didn't have Aaron slinging it 45 times like Mike McCarthy did previously. They kind of got a little bit more balanced, and they wanted to run the football, set up play action fake. I feel like they're trying to take a little bit off of Aaron's plate. Can Aaron Rodgers still put this team on his back if need be and lead them to a chip? Or is his window closing? And just think about this. For as good as Aaron Rodgers has been, and to me, in my lifetime, he's probably the most talented quarterback I've ever seen. But he's only got 1 Super Bowl. He's just got 1. And when you start looking at all these quarterbacks, Drew Brees only got 1 Super Bowl. You start to look at the body of work, but if you go back and you say only got 1, now it's better than none, but only 1 Super Bowl. I think you need to have that second one to solidify your place in the NFL pantheon if you're Aaron Rodgers. Do they have another run in Green Bay, or are they done? And is that window closed, and Jordan Love and the next wave of Green Bay Packers football is where they'll have to get it done? We will see. I'll leave that to you guys. Run or done in Green Bay. What about in Tampa Bay? Obviously, you knew this one was coming. This is a fastball that you saw coming straight down the pipe, and you were ready to load up and knock it out of the park. 43-year-old Tom Brady leaves New England, where the only home he's ever known in the NFL, and he goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're chocked and stocked full of talent. You talk about Mike Evans. You talk about the receiver from Penn State. Oh, God. I always forget his damn name. It'll come to me. They've got 87 tight ends with the addition of Rob Gronkowski. Obviously, they've got Cameron Brate, and they've got O.J. Howard. They've got some guys in the backfield as well. They added Shady McCoy to the mix in the running back department. So there's just stuff everywhere for this Buccaneers football team. The question is, does Brady have enough in the tank to lead this team where they want to go? He's got the experience. He's got the pedigree. He's got the know-how. Does he have enough physical attributes left to lead this team where they ultimately want to go? I've seen Brady kind of diminish in that department. Look, in the short to intermediate, he's still surgical. He's still Tom Brady. He's still as sharp as ever. But it's when he starts trying to push the football vertically, I think that's when you start seeing those balloon balls go in the air and him throwing it 50 yards in the air to fall down. And I don't know if he still has that ability left in him. But when you talk about Brady and you talk about his experience and you talk about a young team that needs someone to lead them, Chris Godwin, thank you, Brian Ingram. I appreciate that. This is the kind of guy that they need. So you look at a 43-year-old Tom Brady and you say, does he have enough to lead this young team? They're really leaning on him. Does he have enough? Is the window open in Tampa Bay with Bruce Arians, who you might get for another year or two before he's burnt out as well? Do you have enough in Tampa Bay defensively? This was a defense that at times was absolutely brutal and torched. They are young. I actually like the talent they have defensively. They're just young. They've got a hell of a defensive coordinator. I think they've got everything that they need to be successful defensively, but time is not on their side. They need to develop. That's not what they're looking for. They need these guys to be good enough now. Is it enough in Tampa Bay for the Buccaneers to win? Do they have a run in them with 43-year-old Tom Brady, or is that window shut in Brady's career and they're done in Tampa Bay? All right, run or done for the Buccaneers in the 2020 season. Now we transition to the AFC, and it's the perfect segue to the New England Patriots, the place where Tom Brady left. Look, they've got a 31-year-old quarterback, so he pales in comparison age-wise to the guys we've been naming and some of the other guys on this list. When you're talking 38-year-old quarterbacks and 36 and 43 and 41, you're at 31, you say he's not that old at all. But as I mentioned with Aaron Rodgers, his body is probably that of a 35, 36-year-old quarterback is that of Cam Newton. And he still hasn't been absolutely named and actually named the starting quarterback in New England. And when you listen to people talk, I don't know if that's going to happen or not. At some point, there's no way they're rolling with Jarrett Stidham over Cam Newton. I can't see that taking place. But nonetheless, the Patriots have the most players opting out of the season. And these aren't bums. Some of these are really impactful guys that have elected to opt out. None more impactful than Donta Hightower on the defensive side of the football. They've still got some issues at receiver. They haven't had guys step up the way that they thought they would in camp to this point. It's funny that I'm hearing that their second best receiver was a cast-off from last year's crew, number 80. It's a weird white guy. What do you expect? It's New England, right? So shouldn't shock us at all. But Mohamed Sanu, check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Guess who? Mohamed Sanu has been relatively quiet in camp. They said N'Keal Harry is struggling to separate. I told them when they drafted him, I said, N'Keal Harry isn't separating from anyone. You're just going to have, and this is why I thought he was perfect for them, because I said, Brady's going to put it in a place where only he can get it and he'll be fine. He's used to making tough contested catches. Now you put a Cam Newton who's not always the most accurate out there, or you put a Jarrett Stidham out there who's not always the most accurate, and now you're asking them to put the ball where only N'Keal Harry can get it with a defender draped all over him. You might get different results there, but he's not separating in camp. So they're not as happy about their receiver position. They did some good things, I thought, in the draft at the tight end position. One of my favorite tight ends, Devin Asiasi, in the draft. So I think he's going to help. But they've still got a ways to go offensively. I think they can run the football if the offensive line is intact. But the question is, how are they going to present their offense? We've heard about these multiple looks. Cam is a runner, all of these things. We'll see what they decide to do. But at the end of the day, all of that is nice. Are the Patriots done? Is that window now officially shut with no Brady? Or can Cam Newton pry that window open just a little bit more and keep it open? I think most people have left the Patriots for dead, and that Cam Newton isn't enough to resurrect them. A lot of people are betting on Belichick, though. I am not. I think the Patriots are going to be competitive, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think the Bills are the better team in that division. I think the rest of the division are licking their chops as well. The Dolphins have never been afraid of the New England Patriots. Go see Week 17 last year when the Patriots needed to win to get a first-round bye and weren't able to do it. The Dolphins have always found a way to beat the New England Patriots. But now the Bills are looking at the Patriots like food, and the Jets are saying, look, man, we haven't eaten some pats in a long time, man. We would sure like to get us a piece. So I think the Patriots could be in a little bit of trouble this year. But is Cam Newton enough with the brilliance of Bill Belichick and the offensive genius that is McDaniels? Can the Patriots keep the window open? Is there a run left in New England, or are they done? What about the Indianapolis Colts? Just 2 years ago with Andrew Luck, this was a team that went to Kansas City and put up a fight on the road after smoking the Houston Texans on the road in Wild Card Weekend. So just 2 years ago, they were in the divisional round. I think they've upgraded the talent on this that team since then, and now they've upgraded the quarterback position, we believe, with 38-year-old Phillip Rivers. So now you ask yourself, with all the talent, and remember, they've got one of the best offensive lines in football, and they've built it as a wall. And then they add one of the most dynamic backs, a guy that I thought could have easily been a first-round pick this year. I had a first-round grade on him, in the Wisconsin back. And so now all of a sudden, you look at that two-headed monster that they have out there with the Wisconsin back, and you've got the what's my man name? And he was a guy that I absolutely loved coming out of South Florida, Marlon Mack. So all of a sudden now, that's a two-headed monster behind a dominant offensive line. You've got speed everywhere if they can keep these guys healthy at the receiver position. You add in another receiver in Michael Pittman Jr., and all of a sudden now, remember last year they added the Ohio State speedster. You already have T.Y. Hilton. There's talent in Indianapolis. This is a talented football team. They've got stuff around Phillip Rivers. You look on the defensive side of the football, they're just one of those unheralded defenses. Not a lot of household names, but they add in Defoe. If you forgot about that, Defoe comes over from the San Francisco 49ers as one of the most dominant defensive interior linemen in the NFL. They had a double-digit sack getter last year from the Chiefs in Justin Houston. I don't know if he can do that again at his ripe old age, but he had a resurgence last year. But they've got a lot of talented guys on that defense. And you look up and you say, man, the Colts aren't that bad defensively. If they can get something out of this offense and be more consistent, can the Indianapolis Colts make some noise? The AFC is wide open. Sans for the top, obviously, but I'm talking about spots 3 through 6. It's anybody's ball game, and you know how it is in the tournament. Once you get into the postseason and they shut the doors, all bets are off. You just want a ticket to the dance. As we saw last year, the Tennessee Titans got in and started wrecking shop. You just need to get in, and those same Titans were up on the Kansas City Chiefs 17-7 early in that playoff game before the Chiefs went off on them. So we know once you get in, you can do damage. Can the Indianapolis Colts do some damage? Does Phillip Rivers finally win a Super Bowl? Does he finally get to a Super Bowl in Indianapolis? Do they have a run in Indianapolis, or are they done in terms of leading because they also have a young quarterback that's learning the ropes out there in Jacob Eason. We'll see what happens with him. But Phillip Rivers there to do one thing, and that's win, and win right away. Can they do it in 2020? Run or done for the Indianapolis Colts? And then finally, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, how can you forget Big Ben, Mike Tomlin, and company? It's easy to forget them because of the injury that Ben sustained last year, and the Steelers became essentially irrelevant. And I thought that Tomlin had one of his best coaching jobs last season with all of the nonsense that he had to deal with at the quarterback position. They were in position with 2 weeks left in the season. They were your number 6 seed in the AFC playoffs by a full game, and they found a way to squander that away down the stretch and missed out on the postseason. But that's nor here nor there. Big Ben is back. They've got some talent on that football team, Juju Smith-Schuster. They got another kid that they like, Johnson, that played well last year. They've got talent at the running back position. This is a team, and they added a guy that they're really excited about. He's been buzzing at camp from Notre Dame, the big wide receiver. And so this is a team that they feel has a chance to really do some things defensively. That's where you kind of look at the Steelers and say, all right, is there enough? We know about Watt and his ability to get to the quarterback. He was phenomenal last year. I mean, he easily could have won Defensive Player of the Year last year. He was a beast. And so you look at him, you look at what the Steelers can do getting to the quarterback, but do they have enough in the back end? I think that's something that has always been a question mark for the Steelers, is their back end of their defense. It just never seems to be good enough back there. And so that's a real question mark for them, is do they have enough on the back end of that defense? Do they have enough at linebacker? I've always felt like there was just this void left by Ryan Shazier when he got injured, and they never really quite filled it. We'll see if they've got enough defensively, but offensively, I think they're going to be good again because Ben is back in the saddle. If he's healthy, look out for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the question is really simple. Mike Tomlin's a hell of a coach. I know some people talk about Tomlin and his mismanagement of the clock or the 2-minute situation, all of that stuff. Look, I'm not going to argue with you on that. But if you're talking about a guy that knows how to motivate his team and find a way to get them to be in a position to win most weeks and into the postseason, it's Mike Tomlin. And Ben Roethlisberger is a seasoned veteran. He knows how to get it done. This is a team that for years, I felt like they were sort of like the New York Knicks of the AFC. They just were stuck in the wrong era. You know, had they played in a Brady-less AFC, Ben Roethlisberger would have been to more and probably won more Super Bowls than just 2. You know, been to just 2 Super Bowls and only having won one. I think he won twice or once. I think they won, and he won twice. They won against he's been to 3. He went in his rookie season and beat the Seattle Seahawks in Detroit, and then they beat the Arizona Cardinals. So he's been to 3, and they lost to the Green Bay Packers. And a lot of Steelers fans think that if Rashad Mendenhall doesn't fumble in that game, they beat the Green Bay Packers as well. But that's nor here nor there. He's won 2 Super Bowls. Easily could have been to 4, 5, or 6, and won 3 or 4 Super Bowls, if not having been in the same AFC with Brady and company. So now that they're out of the way, there's no more Brady. That obstacle and hurdle is no longer there, but there may be an even stiffer obstacle now in Mahomes and the Chiefs, and maybe even the Ravens in their own division, and Lamar Jackson and company to a lesser degree. So the question is, does Ben and Tomlin and company have a run in them, or is that window shut? Is that closed and they're done in Pittsburgh? Let me know. You guys tell me, run or done for those 6 teams as we transition to garbage time. So let's wrap up this show talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars. They've made a couple of moves the last 2 days that kind of signal a bit of a change in Jacksonville. They're trying to clean things up. Doug Marrone has said it as much. And, I've got a chuckle out of Marrone talking about wanting to clean up Jacksonville, and I'm thinking, oh, you're cleaning it up for the next guy? Because, if he doesn't win this year, and I don't anticipate Jacksonville winning anything this year, he's probably going to get fired because he barely kept his job this past offseason. So I find it funny that he's saying he wants to clean it up, but in cleaning up Jacksonville this year, you give yourself the best opportunity to survive and then thrive if you're Doug Marrone. So I get what he's trying to do. They moved on from Calais Campbell. He was a big personality in that locker room. They moved on from Yannick Ngakoue, who did not want to be there. They moved on from Jalen Ramsey. He was a very big personality in that locker room and a bit of a head case. And so, Dante Fowler Jr., a couple of years ago, they moved on from him. He was a problem in that locker room. And so they've weeded out all of the problems, and the last of which was Leonard Fournette. And he was released today, which was an interesting move. You would have thought that they were going to do this. They would have done it a lot sooner. But, maybe something else happened, or maybe they just realized some other guys stepped up in camp and they feel more comfortable. Remember, they drafted a running back last year and they liked what they got out of him in his rookie campaign. So maybe they feel a lot more comfortable at this point of August than they did maybe 2 weeks ago in August as we near towards the season. But whatever the case may be, Leonard Fournette is a guy that's really interesting. I had a tweet from one of my staunch supporters, and he said to me, man, seems like Leonard Fournette has been going downhill ever since that brawl in Buffalo. And I said, and for those of you who don't recall, remember, got into a big brouhaha at the end of that Bills game. He was ejected as he's leaving the field. He gets into it with the fan, is trying to climb into the stands, has to be subdued. And so it was an ugly scene. And honestly, Leonard Fournette has been going downhill ever since, the end of the 2017 season when they made that run to the AFC Championship game. He was instrumental that season in their success and that playoff run, if you recall. That win on the road against Pittsburgh, he was phenomenal. I think he had over 100 yards rushing in that game and a couple of touchdowns. He was huge in that playoff run. And ever since 2017, seems like it's been a steady downhill decline for Leonard Fournette, whether it's off the field. And really, the crazy part is when you hear Leonard Fournette talk, he seems like a really good dude. He's eloquent. Everything seems to be even keel, but you hear things about him that are a little unsettling. This goes back to his days at LSU. And so I just don't know what to make of Leonard Fournette. Hasn't always been the healthiest back, has not been the dynamic back that a lot of people saw him as after his sophomore year at LSU. And so he's going to get another opportunity, obviously. We'll see what, that situation ends up turning into for him. But when you look at Jacksonville, I just find them to be very interesting. I talk about the Jaguars all the time as a team that I love. David Caldwell, their general manager. I think he does a phenomenal job of evaluating talent. They find a way to get good football players year after year. And so you can never, even when the Jaguars weren't good and Gus Bradley was there, they still were talented. Like, there's a reason 2017 happened. It didn't happen out of nowhere. They had been building towards that because they had been drafting well. Because every year they're in the top 5. They were at one point. And I think they were back in the top 10 this past year. And so, they don't miss on those draft picks. I think they were 9th this year, and they selected CJ Henderson, and then they had another first round pick at like 19 or 20. And they take the edge rusher, Kayvon Chason. Again, I thought they killed it in the draft this year. Just a talented football team. But the question has always been in Jacksonville, do they have enough at the quarterback position? And we talked about this on Friday, as a matter of fact, with Blake Bortles kind of holding them back and kind of holding that roster that is really talented hostage. Now, I've always felt like they could have done more at wide receiver, but I think they've got enough stuff there. They've got enough stuff on that team. Now they're going to turn the keys over to Gardner Minshew. Interesting. I liked Gardner Minshew last year. I actually thought he competed his ass off. I wasn't a Gardner Minshew fan coming into the draft, however, in 2019. He surprised me with the way that he played last season. They're giving him an opportunity, but I think it's a one-shot deal for him Because if they stink, if they're 3-13, they're 4-12, I think the next coach is going to have an opportunity to handpick his quarterback, whether that's Justin Fields, whether that's Trevor Lawrence, whether that's Trey Lance, or, you know, somebody else out of nowhere that decides to come in and throw their name into the fray. I think they've got enough draft capital, enough ammunition with all of the moves that they made. They just traded Yannick Ngakoue for a second rounder, so they've got 2 2s, 2 1s. Remember, they're going to have the Rams first round pick again because of the Jalen Ramsey trade. So they've got all the ammunition they need to get as high as number 1 if need be, depending on where they end up in the draft. If they end up with the 3rd pick or the 5th pick in the draft, in the Rams, let's say the Rams end up being a good team this year and they end up with the 23rd pick. If you've got number 4 and you've got number 23 and you can toss in a 2, I think that's enough to get you the number 1 pick overall in the draft if that team doesn't need a quarterback themselves. So I think the Jags are going to be in a position where they can do whatever they like. They can do whatever they like. Yeah, but the real question then becomes, is Gardner Minshew good enough? Does he get the job done? Does he stop Jacksonville from going after a quarterback in the 2021 NFL draft? I'm fascinated by Jacksonville and what's going to become of them this season. And them moving on from Leonard Fournette is interesting. It's another sign that they're getting rid of all the guys that they deem to be cancers in that locker room. So that's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I thank you guys for joining me on another installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Next time we will be together will be Wednesday. And you know what Wednesdays are, in case you don't. It's social media maneuvers, so get your questions ready. I open up the floor to you guys on Wednesdays on the pod and allow you guys to have at it. So get your questions ready. On Wednesday, we'll be live, and the floor will be yours for social media maneuvers. So make sure that you're here chopping it up with me, your man Louie T, live here on the Louie T Network podcast, and we will open the floor to you guys, and you can have at it. In the meantime, you guys take care. Remember, if it's not your man T, it's not, I repeat, not the best NFL coverage it could be. And also, remember, LouieTeeNetwork, all right, .net is up and running, and it is brand new, and included are some different features, including merch. All right, as I showed you before, I'm going to show you again. Got on my Louie T Network shirt right here. And so you guys go check out the store and support the brand. Get you a shirt, get you a hoodie. I can't wait to start rocking mine. Get me a skull cap, all of that good jazz. So go peruse the site, check it out, find something you like, and purchase and help support the Louie T Network. Also, Louie T Network exclusives. If you're like me and you're a junkie and you just need that competitive juice to get flowing, I got what you need. If you jonesing, I got your fix right here on the Louie T Network with the Louie T Network exclusives. Again, we've got the Soul Survivor pool. All right. We've also got Winners and Losers League. All right, that's a year-long pick'em pool, essentially. And then we've got the weekly pick'em. So if you don't want to sign up for an entire year, you just want to play for this week or that week, you can come and get it there as well, man. Get you some cash prizes too, man. Get you this bread. It's out here to be had if you're good enough. Only if you're good enough. If you know the league and you think you want to test your knowledge against some of the best, you're looking at it right here. Come get some, man. Come get in the game. I'm your man, Louie T, though. Until next time, you guys have a good one. I'm signing off. I'm out of here. Peace.